Digital 410 proudly presents the Fail to Fail podcast with your host, Don Abernathy.
Hey everybody, and welcome to the third episode of the Fail to Fail podcast. Now, for those of you keeping track at home, yes, there are technically 4 episodes, but there are actually 3 legitimate original episodes of the Fail to Fail podcast, because one of the episodes, episode 1, is really a repeat, or a stowaway, if you will, from the Waterman and D-Train show, and that was our first interview with Morgan Moose Wright from American Ninja Warrior fame. Then our second episode was with Mike Frenshow, and then the third episode is with our new co-host on the Waterman and D-Train show, my brother Gordon Abernathy. And tonight, we are going to have another guest on. But before we get to all that, let me say this. The Fail to Fail podcast is recorded here in the Act Computer Studio in Cape Coral, Florida, the home of Digital 410 Productions. This is also where the What's the Scuttlebutt podcast and the aforementioned Waterman and D-Train show podcast are recorded. And I want to thank you guys for tuning in, and thank those of you who have stuck around for all 4 episodes now. This is the Act Computer Studio. The Act Computers has been servicing all Southwest Florida since 2004. They specialize in medical clinics, veterinarian clinics, businesses big and small, drywall, AC, you name it, they do it. They do residential as well, but they primarily focus on businesses and business networking. But not only networking, all things technology. Yes, we roll out servers, we can expand your network, we can expand your Wi-Fi, we can install video surveillance cameras on your network, tablets, broken laptops, broken computers, residential repair, pretty much anything. You get yourself a new Ring doorbell you don't really want to mess with, we can help you out there. Simply Safe, if you get one of those home security systems, you really don't want to basically trust your own knowledge to make your family safe, we can install those for you as well. Give us a call at 239-283-1120 or go to act-capecoral.com. Now, I know what you're saying, Don. I like your podcast. I listen to a few of them. I like the Fail to Fail podcast, but I do not live in Southwest Florida, so how can Act Computers help me? Easy, friends. It's called technology. This is the modern day, 2019. As long as you have internet, they can connect to you. So give them a call, tell them what's going on, they'll set up a scheduled time, they'll call you back, they'll instruct you to go to their website, act-capecoral.com, and on the right hand side, right below the search box, it says click here for remote support. You click on that, it'll take you to their website, splashtop.exe will automatically download, you launch that, give them the 9-digit code, and voila, they are in your computer and they can help you with whatever problems you may be having. So it's Act Computers at 239-283-1120, act-capecoral.com. You can find them on Facebook and Twitter as well. Now, if you want to support the show, but your computer's working just fine, you're computer savvy yourself, you really don't need the help of Act Computers, even though they can't help you. But you want to support the show, go to d-410.com. On the right hand side, there is a link that says Become a Patron. Please sign up for our Patreon page. We got 3 tiers. We're not asking for much. Tier number 1 is $1 a month. Tier number 2 is the OG5 plan. I know it's OG5, but it's not $5, nay, it's $3.50 a month. OG5 refers to the first 5 hardcore listeners we had at the Waterman and D-Train show, so the OG5 plan is named after them, but it is, in fact, only $3.50 a month for that tier. And then, if you really like us, if you love us, you can join the Long Arms Deep Pocket plan. $7.50 a month. After month number 2, we will send you a t-shirt of your choice from our storefront. We will send you a t-shirt of your choice from the Digital 410 storefront. We'll reach out to you, say, hey, send us the color, the style, the size you want. Give us your address, and we will send you a shirt on us. So that is the second way. So you can, Act Computers, great sponsor, Patreon, we'll love you there. Or you can just go to d-410.com, click on the merch link, order a shirt to your delight. We make a little bit of money off of that. But if your computer's working fine, you don't want to sign up for Patreon, and you don't need a t-shirt, but you do shop on Amazon, please, once again, go to d-410.com, click on the Amazon link, save that link to your favorites, to your toolbar, to your desktop, wherever you put it, that you know where it's at. And the next time you click on, and the next time you shop on Amazon, simply use that link. And it doesn't cost you anything extra, doesn't cost you any money whatsoever, but Amazon will kick some coins our way, and you can support the show that way. So thank you so much. All the uncomfortable housekeeping is out of the way. Now let's get on with the show. Guest number 4 on the Fail to Fail podcast is a gentleman I've known for a long time, but we will get down that road later. It's Mr. Christopher-P-Stanley. He is the partial founder of a children's book company that you may be aware of if you have young children. The first book they came out with, I believe, was called The Tree Watcher, which was very successful, which led them to go on to starting their own children's publishing company called Jump Splash Books. But I will let Christopher explain that all to us because no one knows better about that than him. Joining us on the phone from my home state, Ohio, Mr. Christopher-P-Stanley. Chris, how have you been?
I have been very well, man. Thank you so much for having me on. It's great to talk to you.
It's good to talk to you. Now, sadly, with the exception of the occasional, hey, how you doing? Nice, happy birthday, great kids,
Right.
love to see the photos on Facebook. I haven't talked to you since probably 1997 because
I think that's correct.
you and I graduated from the same high school. We ran in the same circle group of friends, but our extracurricular activities were greatly different. You were in organized sports and some track and all that, which ironically, 24 years later now I do run, but at the time I was into skateboarding and all this other crazy stuff. But we were involved in some same activities. We knew each other. We hung out a few times. We had some friends, but I graduated in 1997, and so once I graduated, I was basically out of Grove City. I lived on the west side of Columbus, and then fast forward to 2001, I was off to California, and the rest is history. So this is kind of a homecoming for us, and it's been a long time coming. How have you been, friend?
I have been really well. It's funny you say that, 97. I mean, it seems like it was yesterday. It does not seem that's been, 22 years
Oh, Jesus.
since we have last spoken. I mean, it's unbelievable. It's come by in a blink of an eye.
Yeah, I just turned 41 on Saturday.
Oh, my God. Well, first of all, happy birthday.
The last time I
did
saw
see
you,
on Facebook.
you were 17 and I was
birthday.
18.
Yeah, I mean it's crazy. I'm out of Grove City too, and I do have family living there. My brother-in-law is still a police officer there, so I get back on occasion. But it's neat to go back, but it's not the same town we knew, man. Remember past Stringtown Row, like where the White Castle and that was it. There was nothing else past there.
That was it.
Now that's like the entire city. Now it's crazy.
I was up there, June. My nephew graduated high school in Boone County, Kentucky, which is on the other side of Cincinnati, and so I drove up to Columbus for the day. I was real quick turnaround, didn't have much time. I actually drove up there to sell a Vietnam-era tool chest to another high school friend of ours, Nick Tolick, because his elementary-age son loves military history, and they don't know why, and so he bought him this tool chest for his birthday, and so I actually drove this thing from Florida to Kentucky to Columbus. But no, you're absolutely right. Grove City has completely changed. And I will say the first donut I had eaten in a year because of my diet plan was Jolly Pirate. Miss him so much.
It's so funny because I talk about Jolly Pirate donuts with such reverence around. You would think, it's ridiculous. I mean, they are amazing, and I have passed this on to my kids. So whenever we get a chance to go down to Grove City, we have to stop by Jolly Pirate Donuts. It's really funny.
Well, the big difference between Jolly Pirate and everybody else, especially nowadays, now this maybe wasn't the case so much in 1997, but in 2019 for sure, they still to this day make their donuts in-house. Newsflash for you, ladies and gentlemen, Dunkin' Donuts does not. They get it from a regional bakery. That's why they're the same quality as what you get at 7-Eleven. But I used to go to Jolly Pirate at like 3 in the morning on Saturdays when we were in high school because that's when they were back there cooking it all. And I would get them.
It smelled so amazing.
And I'd get them fresh out of the fryer. They were so good.
Yeah. Well, and you know who was the main cook there, right?
I didn't know back then, but I found out after that store was actually going to close up because the owners wanted to retire.
Right. Yeah, I had no idea. Like, I was friends with, the Mastro Giannakises.
How's that for a last name, ladies and gentlemen? Mastro Giannakises. In this case, Ellen Mastro Giannakis.
I'm envious.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I had no idea this whole time. Like, if I had known, just think about, I could have tapped right into the resource. Oh, talk about regret.
Maybe that's why they kept it on the down low. They didn't want to be used for their donut pipeline.
And they would surely have been, so I can understand.
I almost walked out of there with a baseball cap. I truly did, but not a slander on them, but it was a trucker-style cap, and that's just not my bag, so I passed on it. But I considered walking out of there with a Jolly Pirate hat. But we digress greatly. We're playing a little reunion show here. Now, just a little review. the reason we call this podcast Fail to Fail is two reasons. It's kind of morphed as most podcasts do. But not to sound narcissistic, but I kind of got the idea based off of my life. Now, let's roll back a little bit. Growing up, I was in LD classes. I have a learning disability. So in elementary all the way through high school, learning disability in reading, math, and science. Senior year of high school, did not have to take the reading, math, or science proficiency test for Ohio. Interestingly enough, 22 years later, the guy who hosts a World War II based podcast did pass senior year with a C in history. Figure that one out.
Right.
But I remember they would take us to the Buckeyes Boys Ranch, and this is where the juvenile delinquents or the mistreated children would live in dorms. But they would take us down there, and they would give us menial task evaluations to see what we were good at doing, what menial tasks, because clearly we weren't college material. Clearly we weren't going to do anything of value with our lives, so they were trying to find something menial we were good at so they can set us down the path of a good minimum wage job to hold us over until we died. And that's, that's kind of the way they looked at things back then. I mean, because back then, I say LD, well, that's what they called it. They called it LD classes. Nowadays, they have acronyms and different ways to not be so blunt about the fact that you have learning disability, or as me and the aforementioned Nick Tolick would say, literally dumb, because, we're all smartasses, and, when they put you in a small room closet for those 3 courses and the rest of the kids are walking to what they called the mainstream classes, that makes you feel real good.
Right.
You kind of saw the world for what it was. And so, I did not go to college. I did not take SAT courses. I didn't even take the SAT test. And so, to this day, I still can't do any math whatsoever. Ironically, I do read college-level books. All my leisure reading is on World War II. Back in 2001, I moved to California. Got my Microsoft certification. My MCP, MCSC, A+, all that. I have been running a successful IT firm since 2004. I've worked in radio for 6 years, and now I host 3 podcasts. And so I looked at all that stuff, and I said, well, by all and large, and by the path that was plowed for me by my school system and by the people of standing in my community, I was basically set up to be somewhat of a failure in life. At least that's the way they kind of treated me. And somehow, with all the things that were in my way, I failed to fail. And so I said, I want to talk to other people who are kind of in that same way. Well, that started out, and then it also morphed into the second topic, and this is more like where you fall into. And that is people who have found success in career paths that in the past you had to go to large corporations for. You had to try to get your foot into a door, i.e. such as starting your own children's publishing company, writing your own children's book. And so, no, you don't fall into the category such as I did in that way of fail to fail, but you failed to fail in the career path in which you chose, which is 1, children's book, and 2, now you are part owner of a successful bar in Cleveland. And so let's get into it. Obviously, you graduated Grove City High School in 1998. Take it from there.
I'll tell you what, if you don't mind, I want to touch on this the education piece
for
a minute. So, in school, like I was always identified as like a bright kid.
Mm-hmm.
However, I was never on the honor roll. I was not. Do you remember the Renaissance Club?
Mm-hmm.
Like I was not in those things, and I had found that if it was something I loved and was passionate about, like history, for example, I was dialed in. I knew everything there was to know, straight A's. I was in AP history. I took the college test, got a perfect on it. That same year that I got a perfect on the AP US history test, which actually got me college credits, I failed geometry and had to go to summer school in Columbus Public.
Wow.
Right. So something wasn't meshing there. And as I look back now, the way our education system is designed, it is for people who fall right in the middle. We try to continuously fit square pegs into round holes. Our education system, this isn't groundbreaking. This is known. It's designed from the Industrial Revolutionary model, where it's factories. That's why we have bell schedules and we go from here to here to here. That's how it's designed. And so people who, you are clearly a very intelligent, driven man, but they're just like you were saying, oh, LD, you put them in here, because you couldn't do calculus. how many times have you used calculus in your life?
Actually, worse. I can't do division.
Right. It's crazy. And, like for me, why did I fail geometry my junior year? Our education system, this is going to be a whole different tangent, but it frustrates me. So I have, my daughter is on an IEP for reading now. And just to see, to be in the seat where you were, it's so frustrating that we refuse to evolve on our education policy, and it drives me crazy. But back to me personally, right after high school.
Well, actually, you know what? I'm not on a time schedule here. I know you're not either. Let's dig a little deeper into this. Not to get, sure. I like to keep my family's life private, but we'll get in a little bit. I have a couple teachers in my direct immediate family, and one of those teachers is a 4th grade teacher, and she teaches what they call the low. These are the kids that they're not quite special ed. They're definitely not learning disabled, but they are in the mainstream, but they're at the low end of the pool. And so what they do is they take these 25, or starting next year here in Lee County, 32 kids in one classroom, and they give them a curriculum that's going to supposedly meet their needs, but allow them to pass the Florida testing schedule. But the idea is, let's give them a teacher that can teach at their learning level so that they can achieve. And this particular teacher has done that. Whenever she gets her orientations and reviews, all that, administration loves her. But she got very frustrated because she got, right near the end of the year, right before that comes in the future, kids. Right before report cards, she got a memo from the administration to remind her and other teachers in different grade levels teaching the lows that their kids are low. And since they are low achievers, none of them should be getting A's and or B's on the report cards.
Right.
Let that sink in, ladies and gentlemen. So, technically, in order to get that government money and to keep these kids considered low, they are not allowed. Not saying they can't achieve. They are not allowed to get A's and or B's on the report cards. Even though the infrastructure is laid out so that you have a teacher who's supposed to be good enough to teach these kids at the level in which they learn to help them succeed. And even if these kids do in fact earn A's and B's, technically they're not allowed to earn them. But do their parents know this? No. And so you may have a child with some disappointed parents who's doing homework with them every night, who can't understand why Billy, all the work we put in, you're still not bringing home an A's and B's, and Billy's probably still getting in trouble, but little does Billy's dad know that he is making A's and B's, the teacher's just not allowed to give them to him.
Right.
That's our education system.
Of education policy that really, and it's bipartisan, so there's blame to go around, between Bush, No Child Left Behind, and Obama, I can't remember the name of it now,
sure,
which is ridiculous because I talk about it every day. But anyway, between, two administrations, there's blame to go around with every single party in the United States, but we've created a culture of testing where all that matters is the testing scores. And to your point, part of what's in that testing is called standing learning objectives. And so we have to, teachers have to take those at the beginning of the year, throughout the course of the year, and then at the end of the year. And if you show improvement, teachers in Ohio anyway are graded, as successful. So the sort of unwritten rule, and this goes to your point, is kids have to do very poorly on the first standard learning objective of the year. So that way, later on in the school year, when they test them, they're showing improvement. If a kid aces the standard learning objective, there's no room to show improvement.
Yeah.
I mean, how messed up have we made our education system? It's completely ridiculous. This whole culture of test, in my opinion, has to go away. And Ohio is one of only 13 states that has high-stakes testing for graduation, and it's proven even some colleges are dropping ACT and SAT scores down from their list of things that make someone successful because, intelligence does not mean you will be a successful person. It's hard work, and it's grit, and it's determination.
And those are three things I want to touch on, but before we get too far down the path, you brought up No Child Left Behind, which is very interesting because one of the things I tend to bring up on my other podcast, the Waterman and D-Train Show, is good intentions always result in bad consequences. And here is the perfect example with No Child Left Behind. I understand the original idea behind it because, once again, I am a product of it. Back in the early 80s, my parents got divorced. We lived in Kentucky at the time. The court systems were always slow, so custody battle. Part of the year I lived with my dad, part of the year I lived with my mom. It took my mom a while to go from being a stay-at-home wife with no job to being a divorced woman who had to find a job for her to find stability, which meant, as we've all seen, constantly moving, which meant going to different school districts. And so I was at first grade at the time, and so I probably went to 3 to maybe 5 elementary schools my first grade year. And at the time, they did not have a No Child Left Behind, so that meant each elementary school was teaching a curriculum at their own path and a curriculum that their local school districts made up. And so I had no root founding. I had no fundamentals at all because I went to so many different damn elementary schools. And so, end result, I got held back my first grade year. Finally, my dad got custody of me. We moved to Ohio my second grade year, and I maintained the same schools from Hamilton South up until 6th grade when I transferred over to Park Street, and then I rode out the rest of my school years in Grove City. But because of all that moving my first grade year, it really affected my fundamentals, which some could argue maybe led to my learning disability. And so someone got the idea, hey, when we have kids bouncing around like this, we need them to have stability as far as their education goes, so we need to come up with a program that turned into No Children Left Behind, which is no matter what school you go to, at what time of the year, they're all going to be loosely teaching the same curriculum. They may be a week or two off from each other. Well, once you get politicians involved and funding involved, kiss it goodbye. So what started out as a good idea, once all the pork got thrown into it, it's a shit show.
Absolutely. Yeah, and now all that matters is being able to pass the test. So teachers, you can talk to teachers about this for days. I mean, no one's happy about it. But the nature of the job is, what real life skills are you taught in school? Are you taught about credit cards? Are you, are you taught about paying your bills? Are you taught about things? No, you're only taught what is necessary to pass the test because, that's how schools are funded. That's how some teachers are paid in some instances. And that's how in, states like Ohio, you have to pass in order to graduate high school. It doesn't matter if you have straight A's in language arts and you are doing great, you're killing it, you're a great student, your teacher loves you. But if you're a student that has test anxiety or, maybe your parents got in a fight that night, you didn't sleep, and you come and you take a bad test and you don't pass it, you're not going to graduate high school.
Nope.
It's completely ridiculous. And, almost universally, people say this is a flawed system and it shouldn't be this way. And, educators agree. So why, if it's, accepted this is a bad way to educate our students, is it continually being perpetuated?
Follow the money.
That's exactly right. Testing companies make millions and millions of dollars creating packets and booklets and study guides and mandates and everything else. And, I'd be interested to see what legislators have been lobbied by these testing companies and
to
keep these policies in place.
Well, not only do you have the testing lobby, not only do you have the education lobby, but you got the teachers union lobby, and nothing stronger than any union lobby. So forget about it.
Hell no. Right. Yeah, it's sad and it's frustrating. And, Americans are a smart group of people. They said World War II, half the scientists thought the A-bomb was theoretically impossible. Well, we did it.
Yep.
Well, like 3 years, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're telling me we can't solve problems if we came together and said, okay, this is a problem. How do we solve it? We could absolutely do it. But money has so corrupted our politics and everything that I don't know how we're ever going to get anything major done again.
No, money has corrupted it, and politicians' unwillingness to talk about uncomfortable topics, because sometimes problems have solutions that are uncomfortable to talk about, especially in the social realm, and so nothing will ever change.
Yeah.
But So you graduated high school. Now,
Yep.
clearly, based on the first 5 minutes of this conversation, clearly due to the lack of knowledge you have on the education system, either you married into it or you yourself went down that road. Where did you go after high school?
That's going to be a combination. Married into it, and I was a teacher for a time period. Notice I am no longer a teacher. But so I graduated in '98, and I was told, back then, like you said, like if you didn't go to tech school, you were supposed to go to college.
Yep.
Right. And fast forward, we're finding out that maybe all kids don't need to go to college because they don't need to. Right. We're finding that out now, 22 years later. But I did. I went away for my freshman year of college, and I did fine. I did like B's and C's. I didn't really apply myself. And then I came back. My sophomore year, I transferred into Ohio State. Well, I came from a very strict home life, a very bad home life, and I was not prepared for the amount of freedom one has at a place like Ohio State.
Sure.
And I quickly failed out of there. I failed out of college after 2 quarters.
And for those of you who aren't familiar with Ohio State, the college, not just the football team, this is the college where Columbus police had to pass a law that you couldn't have more than 6 keg per block party. This is the same campus that puts...
We regularly broke that.
And 6 kegs is a lot of beer, mind you. And this is also the same college that put up what we used to affectionately refer to as the drunk cables. In order to keep the drunk kids out of a high street, they would put, like 5-aught steel cables down the sidewalks to keep you corralled into the sidewalk so you wouldn't stumble in the traffic. And so, yes, Ohio State is a party school.
Right. And so, I quickly failed out of there. Right about halfway through my second quarter at Ohio State, I just stopped going. And I dropped out. I was kind of foundering for a while, and I decided I went into EMT school into the Ohio Fire Academy. Now, I really only did that because I had a friend who was a firefighter. I was like, oh, that sounds cool. I had no passion for it. I wasn't particularly good at it either. And I was working as an EMT for an ambulance service and just kind of had no direction, no life plan. I finally, history had always been a great love of mine. Like, some people understand math and they just get it. I've kind of always understood history.
Sure.
And just kind of how it all pieces together and, causes, consequences, all of that. It's just always made sense to me. And I have always loved it. So I decided, about a year or so later that I was going to go back to college and I was going to become a history teacher. So I started back off at community college, worked my way up, and I went to Ohio Dominican University, which is just it was a small liberal arts university at the time. Now they have pretty much gutted their liberal arts program, which is sad, but so that's where I went. Now, I did finally, I graduated with my bachelor's degree in 2005. So I was like 25 years old when I finally graduated with my bachelor's degree. And, at the time, the state of Ohio had a law that all teachers had to have their master's degree within, 3 or 4 years of becoming a teacher after the bachelor's degree. So knowing that I wanted to pursue, a career in education, I enrolled into a graduate program, and I did that. I got a teaching job. And of course, as soon as I graduated with my master's degree, Ohio rescinded that law, which means...
I'm sure they issued you a refund, though, right?
Oh, yeah. That extra $60,000 of loans I took out, yeah, they were like, oh, no problem. We'll cover that for you.
Yeah, you're better for it.
I mean, so that also meant I was overqualified.
Yeah.
Because, school districts can now pay someone with just a bachelor's degree way less than they have to pay someone with a master's degree. And it's created this whole other set of problems, And so I kind of found it around. I worked at a charter school, which I really loved. I did stuff with the Ohio Historical Society, which I really loved. And then I kind of went and worked for Ohio State for a little bit in an education program. So I was in education for a while, and my wife is a teacher as well. So I'm well versed in the world of education, but, I quickly became jaded with just sort of all the stuff we've been talking about.
Sure.
As far as actually teaching and talking about history, I absolutely love it. I still miss it to this very day. I was an educational tour guide to DC when I quit last year.
Wow.
So I did that for a while, and I absolutely loved it. And I actually hope to do that again in the future. But teaching, with the politics and just everything that is going on in our society today, it's become a very hard job. It's not an impossible task. Nothing's impossible, but it's a very difficult task in today's environment.
As hard as it is to be a teacher in Columbus, Ohio in 2019, another Grove City alumni, one Mr. Martin Mazika, that poor son of a gun is teaching in New York City, and he doesn't exactly lean left, and so you want to talk about butting heads with half the people in your school.
Yeah, that's funny. I guess I didn't realize he was a teacher in New York City. I mean, I obviously keep up with him on Facebook and stuff, but that has to be tough.
Yeah, I think technically it's either the Bronx or Brooklyn, one of the two. But yeah, he's in New York.
Wow. Yeah, so I went to college thinking I had to go to college. I had debt from my first year and a half, of which I failed out. And it was at that time, when I did decide to go back and make it as a history teacher, what got me through, and I don't say this to toot my horn, but I would work as an EMT all night, go to school all day. I mean, it was just the hard work. I mean, that's what it was. I am no smarter or better than any other person as this profession. I just decided I needed to do something in life, and I wanted to, and I set a goal, and I followed it. And, I'm constantly doing that now. So, fast forward a little bit to the tree watcher. So one of the things I have always loved, telling stories. And that's, I think, kind of goes hand in hand with history, right? All history really is, you're telling stories. Mm-hmm. And I've always been fascinated by that. And, I've always been a decent writer. And, I even got accepted to the Children's Writing Institute when I was like 22. I sent in an example, and, I just didn't go. I didn't do anything with it. And one day I was walking with my infant son at the time and walking around the neighborhood, and the neighborhood had a bunch of like really old trees. And, I was not thinking of how beautiful the day was or anything else. I was just thinking about, oh, hell, there's dishes in the sink, and I got to pay this bill, and I got to do this and this and this and that. And we were walking underneath this giant oak tree, and I just happened to glance down at my son at that time, and I noticed he was just staring straight up into these tree branches, just this look of awe and wonder on his face. And it just made me stop in my tracks. And I looked up, and then I noticed, just how beautiful it was with the sun shining through, and the birds were singing, and you could hear children playing at the playground. It was just absolutely beautiful. It just stopped me in my tracks. And, that moment really has kind of changed the course of my life, because, I was not being mindful of anything. I was just constantly worrying about what I needed to do next and what needed to be done. And from that moment, that's where I wrote The Tree Watcher from. It's just about, basically, it's sort of a love letter to my son, but it's the overall theme mostly is, being mindful of the beauty that surrounds us every single day, if only we stop to pay attention. Sure. And, I thought I had something here, and I had no interest in dealing with the bureaucracy that is the publishing industry.
Oh, no.
To hear, like, I did research, of course, and I thought about submitting it, but the process seems so ridiculous and cumbersome. And, with
draining
technologies out, like you mentioned earlier, that didn't exist when we were in high school. You can bring these things directly to market and directly to people. And, I thought I had something, and, it was originally going to be a one-off book. And I actually did the illustrations myself for this, but I had ideas for other books. At that moment, I kind of stopped, and more books were just flowing out of me. And I called my buddy Alex. So Alex actually graduated. I don't know, do you remember Alex Levasseur?
Oh, vaguely. Different circles,
so
I
he
think.
graduated, yeah, different circles. So he graduated with me in '98, and he is an artist. And I said, hey, man, you want to do some illustrations for this book I have? And he said, yeah, no problem. And we were going to go that route where I was going to write some books and he was going to illustrate and I might put one out or here or there. And then, it kind of hit me, wait a minute, why don't we create our own publishing company? We could actually start something here. And we did. I mean, we had to learn everything from the ground up. I mean, talking about how to format books, how to get them, printed, how to do proofs, all this stuff. And, speaking of failing to fail, the Tree Watcher, has been very well received, and I won an award for it when it came out and stuff. And, but when I first published the Tree Watcher.
Well, let's not be modest. I mean, I'm looking at the cover. You won, what, a 5-star award from, what awards did that book win?
Yeah, so Reader's Choice gave that one, but also the Gittle List, which publishes awards for independent picture books. It won one of the top 10 picture books of 2016.
Well, that's nothing to sleep on.
Yeah. So it's nice. It's
Sure.
a nice sort of validation, but not why any author I think makes books, of course.
No.
But well, where the hell was I going with that?
Well, at some point you started and then you came up with I Dreamed I Was series, I'm guessing.
Right. So, but teaching, we had to teach ourselves this whole process.
Mm-hmm.
So on the not failing sort of motif, it easily could have been overwhelming. It was overwhelming at times. How do we format? How do we do this? We have to buy ISBNs. We have to do this. None of that stuff we knew or were prepared for. We just taught ourselves. We researched and we did it. And it was trial and error. So with the Tree Watcher, okay, so, we just talked about some accolades and people love it. When it was first printed, I had a friend who was a professional editor. She looked through it. My wife read through it 1,000 times. I read through it 1,000 times. I started selling it. Well, about 2 weeks later, I happened to just be flipping through again, and I saw a typo. My heart, I thought I was going to die.
Well, it's crazy. It's crazy you say that because going back to my learning disability, one of the problems I have, and I see the same thing, when I write something and then I read it, my mind autocorrects it because I'm not reading what's on the paper. I'm reading what's in my head because I just wrote it. And so when I publish these podcast pages and I post a page and I usually end up editing the stuff and publishing it at 12 in the morning, and then I set a Facebook schedule to launch at 9 a.m. the next morning, and then I see the post and I'll see a typo even though I read the thing 6 or 7 times because my mind doesn't see what's on the paper, it sees what's in my mind. And so I had the same problem, and it's so disheartening. One time I remembered I interviewed a guy for What's the Scuttlebutt. He was in the Netherlands, and I misspelled his name. And he's the one who pointed it out to me. And you want to talk about embarrassed. And it wasn't as simple as just changing the name on the website, because what happened is when I uploaded the file, his name was in the file, and so it was on iTunes. And so I actually had to delete the file off of the server, let iTunes refresh before it would actually update the name with the correct spelling. And I felt like such a jerk. And so we've all been there. And it's crazy how that works. Right. I mean, you yourself, your wife's a teacher, and maybe because you're too close to it, and that's where a distant third party who's not as close to it during the writing process comes in handy.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I am very good at proofreading or reading other people's work. When it comes to mine, I am the worst. I should be the last person proofreading my own work because of exactly what you said. In your head, the way our brain works, I just see it as I want it to be seen.
Mm-hmm. It's magic.
And so I miss that, and so I use this example when we go to school visits. When schools have us in, I talk about this all the time because, failure is a learning opportunity. And if we don't take risks, then we're not ever going to get anywhere. And so, I use this example when I'm talking to kids at elementary schools that, don't give up. I could have easily packed it in, been too embarrassed, taken the book off, everything else. I corrected it, resubmitted it, did what I needed to do. And then it was out there, and then I ended up winning an award for it. I mean, it was mortifying, but it's not the end of the world.
And you got some collector's items floating around out there.
What's that?
I said, yeah, but now you got a few collector's items floating around out there.
Oh, absolutely. There's probably, I think before I caught it, I don't know, over 100 probably were like sold online. I was like, so I'm just waiting for people to be like, hey, look at this.
Yeah.
It's crazy. But from there, we learned, okay, now we brought in an editor and we're starting to build up this team. And from there, like you said, we have kept going. The I Dreamed I Was series is a lot of fun. I Dreamed It Was a Bird was first. And that one was kind of, I don't know, it's kind of heartfelt. I dreamed I was a bird. What would you see if you were a bird? Where would you go? Those kind of things. From there, we did a fun one called I Dreamed It Was a Reindeer, which coincidentally came out right before Christmas. I mean, just a coincidence, of course.
Sure. A well-planned coincidence.
Right. And that one was funny. And then the latest one, I Dreamed It Was a Turkey, is very funny. And of course, it threw some. So, we're kind of going into the more humor genre just because it's more fun, quite honestly. It's a lot of fun. So the latest book we did, Alex and I actually co-wrote it together. It's called Dr. Ulysses J. Picklebottom's Guide to Everyday Household Monsters and How to Defeat Them. This book has been just such a lot of fun. It's so different than our other ones. This one's actually like 104 pages. And when we go to our school visits, it's great. We do a whole monster presentation. We have the kids help us design monsters that are going to appear in future books. And we get very loud, great, and much to principal's dismay, I'm sure. But we have a lot of fun, and it's going well. Alex and I both are so busy all the time. I don't know if we're going to have another one this year, but we're hoping to have another in the I Dreamed I Was series out this year. But we're going strong. We signed another author to the Jump Splash imprint. He has 3 books out with us now, which are all very well received. And, it's going well. We're very happy doing this. It's a very nice creative outlet doing what we want.
And that would be the Bump series, which looks very entertaining because I'm perusing your website as we go over these. And so, yeah, your guys' catalog has grown immensely, rather quickly. I mean, you started us, what, 05, 06?
Actually, we started in 2015.
Even better. I mean, so, yeah, it's been even a quicker ride and growing substantially since then. And so you have all that going, and one of the things you've brought up, in which I think anybody who listens to this who is successful or borderlining on that, I don't fancy myself successful yet, but I'm well on my road and path there. But key things. 1, hard work, and I think that's one of the things that a lot of our population is suffering from these days. Especially the younger group. I remember, probably about 10 years ago, I was talking to my girlfriend's brothers and sisters. They were 13 at the time. No, they were 16 at the time, and none of them had jobs. And my girlfriend's like, why don't you guys go get a job working somewhere? Like, well, we're not going to work fast food. It's like, well, why not? We both worked at Wendy's, and I say this so many times. It doesn't matter when you're young where you work. The more jobs you have, the more life skills you will learn, and the more it'll teach you and more benefit it'll have to whatever career path you end up in the future. And I know you worked at Wendy's, right?
So I worked at Fazoli's.
Yes, Fazoli's, that's right. You and Michael P. Thompson. And but you can relate to this. One of the things I always use about the Wendy's thing is one of my jobs was to clean the dining room and the restrooms. And I don't know what goes on in the ladies' restrooms that makes them believe it's New Year's Eve every night, but the floors were constantly covered with shredded toilet paper. Well, if your job as a 17, 18, 19-year-old cat is to clean a restroom that has been used by probably 1,000 people every day, cleaning your bathroom at your apartment when you're 19 on a Saturday, not so bad.
Right.
Cleaning a stove that's made 2,000, 3,000, 5,000 hamburgers that day, every day, sucks. Cleaning your stove or microwave on a Saturday, not so bad. And so you learn life skills from even the most mundane job. And so the more jobs you have, starting at an early age, even if they're unglamorous, it's going to help you. not to mention customer service, interacting with people, which I think is going to be a huge problem. Social interaction has gone away. I remember about 2 years ago on the radio, we did a story about, I think it was the Washington State Police Department. They're having issues with their new cadets at the police academy. None of them had social skill. And being a police officer, you have to know how to talk to people. And so they would make them go down to the mall in plain clothes on a Saturday and make them talk to strangers.
Oh, wow.
Just so they would learn how to interact with people, because that's like job one as a police officer. If you can't talk to a complete stranger, you're in the wrong field of work.
I mean, you're absolutely right. And, you know, part of this, too, is the way that since, you know, No Child Left Behind up to now, like, these kids have grown up in an environment where you have to know what you need to know to pass the test. And sort of the process of how to learn has been pushed aside by the very nature of our education system now. So what colleges are finding, that students are very good at one thing.
Mm-hmm.
When they have to sort of think outside that box and be creative, they struggle. And, you know, it's the same thing with the social skills too, you know, with the advent of, by the way, I'm so glad we didn't have cell phones and social media when we were in high school. Can you imagine?
I know, we had beepers, and even those were contraband. I remember to this day, I used to cut a hole in the pocket of my pants so I could put the beeper on the inside so that the teachers wouldn't see the clip and take it away.
That's fantastic.
Because back then, if you had a pager and you're 16, you must be a drug dealer. At least that's what they all thought.
Yeah. I had a pager. Well, I got a pager for my 16th birthday that was the size of my entire hand. It was one of those huge ones that you could read the text across. Mm-hmm. You remember those bad boys?
Yep.
Unbelievable. But, yeah, and, you know, now with texting, people have really lost the art of having a one-on-one conversation or in person. And I see it all the time, you know, with a friend. So I have a friend whose daughter is a teenager, and, you know, she is like best friends with people via text or FaceTime.
Yep.
When you get them together, it's like they're complete strangers. It is the strangest thing I've ever seen. Mm-hmm. And you're right. I mean, it's scary, and maybe it's just us being old curmudgeons, but I don't know how, you know, it's a scary prospect to think about where we're going in the future, because, you know, hard work has kind of been, I don't know, it feels like it's been demonized a little bit.
Oh, absolutely.
You know, I mean, but it's the only way you're ever going to make it.
Yeah.
You know, it's the only way I've made it to where I am. And just like you said, I am definitely not successful yet. I think I have made strides toward being that way, but I'm working every single day. I was working right up to the minute you called me.
Yep.
And I'm going to be working again after we're done.
And that's,
you know, and it's just,
and that's number 2 on that list. Long hours. If you're one of these cats who thinks, well, I put in my 8 hours, don't ask anything else of me, that's great. Don't expect to get much further out of the position you're currently in. Definitely don't expect to ever start your own business or become, don't expect to find a way outside of maybe sitting around, if you're lucky enough to have a YouTube channel where you have 85,000 people watch you sleep, like some video game guy I heard about last week. People actually watching him sleep. But anyhow, unless you have a YouTube channel because you're good at playing video games, if you're actually in the work industry, if you're an 8-hour day, Jay, good on you, but be prepared to have a pretty low pay ceiling. And definitely don't be the guy who likes to include in his vocabulary the phrase that'll definitely kill your job potentials. Hey, that wasn't in the job description. Because employers love to hear that.
Right.
But you got hard work, long hours, and self-motivation.
Yeah. I mean, it is what it is. You have to set a goal. Like, you know, I am also in the bar business. Mm-hmm. And to be honest, I was not expecting the amount of energy and effort that I have put into it. I was not expecting that.
Well, how did you make that transition? How did that come about?
So when my education ride was over, I had some buddies in Youngstown who were opening a self-service craft beer bar.
Which is very cool.
So, yeah. So, it's called Whistle and Keg. And so it's not prepay. You know, there are some places where you can put $20 on a card and that can get you beer. So it's not that. So, you know, everything's pay as you go. It's connected to your wristband. It's a really good time. And so they are opening this bar. And I had been working there a day or two a week just to make some extra money on the side. And as I was transitioning out of education, I told them, I'm like, hey guys, listen, I don't think I'm going to be able to continue on here. I'm going to have to, I thought what I was going to do was go try to be a train conductor. For as odd as that sounds, I was just trying to think about things I could do that might interest me and make me happy. And I really love to travel, and, you know, who doesn't like trains? So I was like, oh, maybe I'll go try that. They said, listen, we've got an offer for you. Why don't you come on board with us? And here we are. And always the plan was to keep expanding. So we have now opened in Cleveland. We opened in Cleveland in March, have one in Youngstown, and actually Columbus will be
nice. Homecoming.
Yeah. Yeah, man. So I'm really excited for that. But, you know, when I first came on board, I worked at Fazoli's. I did some fast food stuff, but I had never really been in the industry before. Now, I have been the patron of many a bar in my day, don't get me wrong. But, you know, as far as from the working side of it, I wasn't. And so I was really unprepared for the amount, once we expanded to Cleveland and now Columbus, for the amount of energy and effort, and, you know, quickly had to learn a lot of things. And, you know, there's a lot of times where I'm working right up to the time I can't anymore. I go to sleep, pop up in the morning, right back at it. And it's because I know I have a goal where I want to get. And if you don't keep to the grind and keep pursuing, we're never going to get there.
Preach.
You know, things are going to fall. And, you know, what I have always cautioned myself is, you know, there are things like, tonight I got to get our newsletter out. You know, it goes out to hundreds and hundreds of people. I constantly have to guard against myself, like, I can let that sit another day, you know, everything else, because there's important things that could drive business in there. And, you know, I always try to remember, you know, don't put off till tomorrow what you can get done today.
I used to be a gold medalist procrastinator. Middle school, high school, all the way up until I was 23. Ironically, you know, we're very kind of, was like, if you're on a trajectory line, I was like 3 rungs below you. You're a paramedic. I actually built ambulances for Horton for 2.5 years.
Oh, that's awesome.
And so after 9/11, and, you know, 9 of our trucks got destroyed, I went through a divorce, and I was sitting at home. I got fired from Horton because, well, I was out drinking every night instead of showing up to work. And so I was sitting on my 401k, and I was sitting on my computer, just learning computers. And my dad's like, he's living out in California. He's like, well, what do you want to do with your life? You know, you're divorced. You're living off your 401k. I said, you know, I spend 8 to 12 hours a day. Now, this is back in 2000. This is before the whole world went computer crazy. I said, you know, I spend 8 hours a day on my computer. Might as well get paid for it. I don't know what it is, but I hear these commercials about A+ and MCP. Maybe I can do something with that. And he's like, well, you can find another job, pay rent, stay in the same town with your ex-wife, or move out to Long Beach, California, live with me for free, and I'll pay for your school. Well, I packed up my bags and I moved to Beverly. But it's all about procrastination. You got to get rid of. Don't even let that in your vocabulary. And you could probably agree with this, because one of the things people ask me is, how do you do it? Because up until recently, I've been doing the IT stuff. Me and my father started this business in 2004. Then things got a little rough in 2008, but we made it through. Then I got the job, which fell in my lap, working in radio. So I'd get up at 5 in the morning, work computers until noon, drive 33 miles to the radio station, work there until 6, drive 33 miles home, sometimes go home and eat and then go to the gym, or go back to work doing server rollouts until 12 and 1 in the morning. And people are like, oh, how do you do it? How do you find time? And here's a little advice, and I'm sure Christopher can agree with this, because I imagine he lives his life the same way. I do service work for a living. My job is to be at certain places at a certain time, usually an hour to an hour and a half at a span. And so I treat everything in my life like a service job. Whether it's doing a podcast, whether it's doing a service job, whether it's going to the gym, whether it's getting up in the morning and running, whether it's spending time with the family, what have you, which I know that sounds horrible, but it's the only way you can live your life. Short-term goals, key, and I look at everything like a job. When I get home, I eat dinner. Yeah, I want to sit around and relax and watch American Pickers for the next 3 hours. But I tell myself, well, I got to do an hour at the gym or I can't go to sleep. And so I treat it like a job. And treating it like an hour job is just, it's easier to check off the list. It's just one more thing you have to get done before you're done. And so I just put everything on the calendar and I just treat it like one more job I have to do before the day is done. And you do that long enough and it just becomes muscle memory. And before you know it, you're able to do more and more. And if you can work in more and more things that may trickle in a little bit more money when you're doing them, before you know, things get a little bit easier in life.
Yeah. You know, if I had one piece of advice, and you just mentioned this, is to use the technology you have as a tool.
Mm-hmm.
You know, my cell phone is the only way I can keep straight everything I need to do and when to do it.
Yep.
Whether it's my, all of my shared calendars, everything I need is in there. And what I have started doing in the last couple of months, this has completely changed my life. So I'm a very list-oriented person. So if I just kind of feel like I have a million things to do, I don't know where to start, I have to just sit down and make a list. Here's what I have to do, this, and this. Well, I kept it on paper, then I would lose the paper, or something would happen,
mm-hmm.
right? I started using the reminder alerts in my iPhone. And it has changed my productivity to the nth degree. I mean, no longer am I afraid about what I forgot. Oh, I got to do this, and this. Like, I just set a reminder every hour, do this, do this, do this. It pops up. It doesn't go away until you do it and click it off. And I have been encouraging my own children to use it. These are tools. These aren't just things that, have fun with on FaceTime.
Sure.
Use them as a tool for productivity and to help your life. It has made such a difference in my life. And I'm sure as I continue on that will keep evolving. But, that is one thing that, most people, especially young people now have an iPhone or a smartphone. Use it to help you in your productivity for your career and your aspiration.
I couldn't agree with you more. I was just thinking, a while back I stumbled across a theory that I've been trying to adopt and I've tried to spread through my podcast. And let me know what you think. There are two types of people in life. There are the this is going to suck people and that sucked people. And let me explain. Everybody, we're all the same. We all have something on our calendar that we do not want to do. If you are a this is going to suck person, you're the type of person who continues to kick that thing down the calendar, procrastinating, putting it off. And while you're doing that, you're complaining to everybody who is willing to listen about how bad this, whatever it may be, whether it's mowing the grass, getting a root canal, whatever, filing taxes, this is going to suck, I don't want to do it, this is going to suck, I don't want to do it, man, this is going to suck. All you're doing is making that, whatever it is, 1,000 times worse. You're also bringing down everybody around you, making their lives worse. Or you can be a, well, that sucked person. And that's the person who knows it's on the calendar. They ignore it. They do all the planning that needs to be done to get the job done. They suck it up. They do the job. Once the job's done, they step back and they say, wow, that sucked. And then they move on through life. It's over. It takes less energy to be a, well, that sucked. You're talking to a guy who's 6'5", who lives in Florida, and sometimes has to crawl around the attics of businesses that are about, 4.5 feet and 130 degrees to run Cat 6 cable and or security cameras. Now, I can dread that and run my entire week thinking, well, I got to do that job on Friday. This is going to suck. Or I can just look at the calendar, buy all the hardware I need, and then once it's done and I'm covered in insulation, rat feces, and sweat, and say, wow, that sucked. Okay, what else do I got on the schedule? And it doesn't affect your life half as bad. You're less stress, less anxiety, and your wife's not mad at you for ruining her day. So which person do you want to be?
I really like that. I'm totally steal that from you. Just so you know.
Steal it, change the wordage a little bit, and put it in a children's book, and I'd love to read it.
That's right. You know what? Deal. We'll work on that. But
maybe don't be a fellow. Oh, here you go. Don't be a Downer Donnie. Fix it something like that.
Yeah, I love it. And, as a fellow 6'5", I totally empathize with you crawling into tight spaces.
I'll send you a friend invite from my Facebook group called It's a Short Man's World, I'm Just Living in It.
Yes, please.
I guess
people don't realize, hey, why do you drive a truck when you like a Prius? Yeah, I would love to get 50 miles a gallon. I don't sit.
Why do you take a bath? Are you a girl? No, it's called because I grew up in Columbus, and the first apartment I had when I was 18 was built in 1970, and the shower head hit me in this belly button, and so I'd have to get on my knees to take a shower, so it was easier just to sit in the bathtub and take a bath, and I've gotten used to it.
No, I was going to say, my wife thinks I look like Will Ferrell in Elf
when
he's trying to take a shower.
Yep.
That's what she compares me to.
Why do you have scars on your knuckles? Oh, because back in the 70s and 80s, the fad was to take stucco on a paintbrush and stab the ceiling with it so stalactites came down. And so whenever I changed my t-shirts, I would drag my knuckles across the ceiling and cut them all up. I could go on for days. It's a short man's world. We're just living in it.
That's exactly right.
Don't even get me started on trying to find long-sleeve shirts. Well, can't you just buy a double extra large? Why, so I can look like I'm wearing a maternity shirt?
Right.
They flare out in the stomach.
They flare out. It looks ridiculous.
Can't you go to a big and tall store? Yeah, and pay a 60% markup? Ah.
I'm not trying to give them a plug, but you know what I have found that my fashion needs have been greatly met of late is the Eddie Bauer outlet.
I was going to say outlet store.
Yeah.
It doesn't even have to be an outlet. Eddie Bauer, just outlet in general. I go to Bell's Outlet.
Yeah.
Because you'll find like a size 32, 35 in length.
Yeah. They have long, tall sizes. Mm-hmm. And I feel like, and I joke about my wife this, I feel like an actual human being now. The shirt, I'm not wearing a belly shirt. The sleeves fit. It's amazing.
All the size, now I do have small feet. I wear 10.5 to 11, but all you people looking for size 14s, they are at the outlet stores because the main stores couldn't move them. So you can get them at a half a price at the outlet store. I'm not getting plugs, but I buy Wrangler jeans brand new for $12.50 at Bell's Outlet, and I buy brand new Levi's 504s and 507s for $25. So not only am I finding jeans that fit, but I'm paying 3/4 less than you guys are paying at your regular highfalutin stores where you find clothes for short people at. So win-win on my part.
Right. Yeah. And the great thing about outlets too is for some reason everything's 50, 60, or 70% off at all times. I mean, it's an amazing thing.
Mm-hmm. So you got the book thing going. You got the bar thing going.
Right.
You're loving life. You're a very patriotic fella. I see your 4th of July photos every year. They're great.
Thank you. Yeah. I take the 4th of July very seriously. It's by far my favorite holiday. I make my kids listen to old patriotic songs the whole way down on the trip. And, it's great. So my buddy lives on the parade route in Upper Arlington, and so we watch the parade. And then after, we have what's called the Patriot Games, where it's just a bunch of yard games, but we compete for medals and all that stuff. And I take it very seriously. I'm in it to win it, man.
And I know you were heartbroken, much like I was. For you Sirius Satellite listeners, you ever figured out the scheme that you can hear the 80s on 8 and the 60s on 6? And the 90s on 9, but for some reason, let's kick the 40s down to 238. Why is everybody hating on our 40s music? I get so much crap for listening to 40s music. It's what's wrong with it? What's wrong with the Andrews Sisters?
It's the best music, and I went off on a rant for days about that. I think I even put it on Facebook.
Mm-hmm.
It said, in a world where the 40s is kicked off for the Pitbull station, that's not a world I want to live in.
Yeah.
Or whatever, it's I listen to it all the time. And I absolutely love it. And, there's something, not to go off completely on a whole different tangent, but, as a reenactor, I think you'll get it. There's just something about that era that is so nostalgic that I can't even explain it. And I'm just completely drawn to it. Well,
I've mentioned this on my Waterman D-Train show. I use this as an example of, and we used to hear it when we were kids and we didn't understand, but the dumbing down of music. Well, let's look at it. We won't even go back to the 1800s and the 20s, but let's just start in the 40s. In the 40s, if you wanted to make music, you either had to be an idiot savant or you had to be what we call classically trained to read music and to play an instrument. In order to make music, you had to have some intelligence when it came to reading music, understanding bridges, choruses, verses, the whole 9 yards to actually create music. Fast forward to the 60s, you still had to know how to play guitar, drums, and all that. 70s rolled around, fewer notes. Then heavy metal came out with the power chord. Fast forward to 2019, where all you have to do is learn how to do a computer and have a sense of time and a sense of rhythm, and you can make music. And so, yes, technically we have, and now I think they say the average pop hip hop song has the reading level of a fourth grader. So yes, music has been dumbed down tremendously. And for those of you who say, well, it's so stick in the mud, 1940s music, really? Have you listened to the Andrews Sisters, All's Fair in Love and War? Those girls are basically saying, hey, if you don't go out there and sleep with that fella, I'm going to before Betty Joe down the street does. So that was pretty risque music.
Oh, absolutely. And, it was much more nuanced.
Mm-hmm.
Right? It wasn't out in your face. It was the art of subtlety, for sure.
And the other one I like to point out, everybody's familiar with the Boogie Woogie Bugle Boy for Company B. But if you listen to the lyrics, you might be surprised to find out that the Boogie Woogie Bugle Boy from Company B couldn't keep time. He was a great trumpet player, but the sergeant had to go out and draft him a band because he couldn't play for a crap by himself.
Right.
And so the plot lines are there. And I don't know. I love that music, and I always find it's interesting when you talk to people. What do you listen to? Oh, I listen to everything, and then they actually have a very minute catalog of what they actually listen to. Whereas when I tell people I listen to everything, I really do, from 1940s to outlaw country to hip hop to everything. So I don't know. That's just my little tangent when it comes to music. As I look around, you'd probably be jealous. I'm sitting here staring at 3 artifacts of Lucky Strikes right now.
Oh, my God, I am jealous. And, here is a great story for you about Lucky Strikes. Now, first of all, I have a replica Lucky Strikes from in Conneaut, Ohio. They do a D-Day reenactment.
Yeah, that's on my bucket list.
It's fantastic.
Did you go last year?
Yes, I did.
Okay,
when they fired that 88, I about pooped my pants.
All the tanks down there, Rabbi Rob and his crew, those are my guys.
Yep.
My 1st Infantry Division, we actually train with them. They are outside of Orlando, and I actually train with them. I know Rabbi Rob. I'm very familiar with all his tanks, and if you look on YouTube, Military Collector Season 2, Episode 1, they film out at Rabbi Rob's farm, and you will see me in the opening scenes. I'm the guy whose helmet fell off, who's dragging his wounded comrade back. But yeah, I actually have the pure benefit of working with those guys, and so that has been on my bucket list. I really wanted to get up there this year with it being the 75th anniversary, but I had the pure privilege of being taken out to Fredericksburg, Texas 2 months ago to the National Museum of the Pacific War to participate in their living history event for the weekend. And so I don't know financially I'm going to be able to make it up to Conneaut this year, but it definitely is on my bucket list, and maybe I can make it next year.
Yeah, it's incredible. So I have a reconstructed Lucky Strike that I keep in my truck at all times. But a couple years ago, this is 4 years ago now. I was living in Columbus at the time, and it was an old house. It was built in 1949.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just an old crappy house. And finally, our air was getting through, and so I called people in to clean out the vents. So they were in there for a while, and when he was done, the guy came over and was like, hey, when was the last time these vents were cleaned? I was like, I don't know, man, honestly. He's like, well, I don't think they've ever been cleaned. And I was like, what do you mean never been cleaned? He's like, I don't think these have ever been cleaned since this house was built. He's like, look at this. He pulled out an event, a full pack of Lucky Strike cigarettes.
White or green pack?
What's that?
White pack or green pack?
It was a green pack.
Do you still have it?
I do. I have it somewhere around.
Cellophane still intact?
Yeah, I mean, it's not like in mint.
It doesn't matter. The reason I bring that up, the green pack was a limited rollout. That was for World War II because they thought for a limited time, well, we don't want guys walking around in the field with white cigarette packs, and so there is a substantial price difference, and believe it or not, there is a market, not that you want to sell it, but it's always nice to know something has value. There is a substantial price difference between a unopened white pack of Lucky Strikes and the green pack, especially to the World War II market. And so that's even cooler that it's a green pack.
Yeah.
They still make white packs. They're $10 a pack, and I do buy them. I quit smoking. I'm not a daily smoker anymore, but I still do smoke either Camel non-filters or Lucky Strike non-filters during my reenactments. But at $10 a pack, it's a little painful.
Yeah. So the state the stamp tax, I think it was like 2 cents. I think was the tax on it. I mean, it was old pack, but I was being just fascinated by World War II and just that sort of era. And like, of course, I was like a kid in a candy store. I was like, oh my God, look at this.
Did you look at the bottom where it says LSMST?
I will need to find that.
If you look at the bottom, I know the white packs have it on there. I'm not sure if the green ones do, but do you know what that means?
No.
Lucky Strikes means fine tobacco. And usually it's stamped on the bottom of the pack. It'll say LSMST, and that's all it says.
Toasted.
So there is a little history for you. Actually, it's funny. I know this is the Fail to Fail podcast, but since we're on the topic, I just rolled out T-shirts, and I have I'm giving away some stickers for the What's the Scuttlebutt. I just spent last weekend making. They look like the logo off the white Lucky Strikes pack with the red, the green, the gold circle around it. And so
that's cool.
To make it look like the logo, I made What's the Scuttlebutt podcast a run-on word. So it's instead of it's what's the is one word, and then scuttlebutt's one word. And then instead of it's toasted, it says in stereo. And then at the bottom, instead of cigarettes, it says World War II based podcast, all one word, so that it looks like the Lucky Strikes logo. It's pretty funny, and I enjoy it.
I love it, and I will be tuning in. I drive to Cleveland many times during the week, and I'm constantly trying to find podcasts I enjoy.
Well, I will send you the link to that. All these podcasts, Fail to Fail, Waterman D-Train, and the What's the Scuttlebutt, we're on all of your outposts. We're on the iTunes. Now, I know iTunes is going away. Now they're launching Apple Podcasts, but Apple Podcast, iHeartRadio, Stitcher, all of them. Pandora has gotten to the podcast game, but they literally make you fill out a manifesto of why you should be on their system. So I'm not there yet, but anywhere else, the Spotify's, all that stuff, we're there. Wow, Christopher, what other than expanding Whistle and Keg and coming up with more authors for Jumps? By the way, how did the name Jump Splash come to be?
So, we were trying to think of a name for the company. And, I'm going to give Alex credit for this one. So he was listening to some sort of presentation by Neil deGrasse Tyson. And he was talking about the sense of wonder. Like, if you look up at the sky, you see these wonders, right? And that's kind of the thing the Tree Watcher touches on. And, we really wanted to capture that. And he was saying, even doing something as simple as jumping in a puddle and watching the ripples and everything else can cause such wonder and everything else. And Alex was like, man, I really love that. What if we called it like jumping, dancing in the rain or something? But we came to a conclusion. Both of us together, we just kind of thought, Jump Splash. And, we thought about, I really like our logo now. It's kind of the, silhouette of a kid jumping into a book with a splash coming out of the book. And, that's where we are because, it's, and we kind of just added the fun tagline, like adding a splash of imagination.
Yeah, and it's funny. I have heard his little Neil deGrasse Tyson speech on that, and he actually goes as far as saying, he's kind of talking to parents. He's like, don't interfere with that. You see a kid about ready to drop an egg, let him drop it. There's education to be there. What happens when something as rigid as an egg hits the floor and shatters? Or what happens when you jump in a puddle and the residual of the mud is staining? He's like, yes, it's inconvenient because you got to do the laundry, or yes, it's inconvenient because you got to clean up the egg. But there's so much to be learned for that child in that moment of what happens when the water gets on the clothes and it creates a stain, or the egg and all that. And so that's very cool that you said that, because I have heard him give a version or two of that speech in multiple interviews. And so what's on the horizon for you? I mean, you can't. When you're burning candles at both ends, there's always 2 or 3 more candles in the box. So you have any other things you wanting to get, checked off your list?
Yeah, I have been playing around. So I think I mentioned earlier, like I really, really enjoyed my time as a educational tour guide in Washington, D.C. Mm-hmm. And so my buddy Sean and I, who I used to be a history teacher with, we did a bunch of videos called the History Geeks. And we went to various places throughout Ohio. We even did a live stream from DC, and like we put together these really cool videos. Like I put together a lot of series called like Field Tripping, where we had a lot of low income kids, so
Sure.
like kids that couldn't afford to go to places like Serpent Mound, or like we went there and we did the video like a field trip for them. And I absolutely love doing that. And we have. I think we have them up on the web. I think it's historygeeksonline.com, where we have some of our videos and productions up there. And, some of them are very, technologically speaking, very basic, to where we got to the point where we were going to start getting pretty good. I even got to the point where I was getting ready to be able to have a whole camera and media guy and do these things. And we never got not to see it through. But, I have been thinking a lot about trying to do something like that again, and maybe if it's just traveling and doing history trips and putting them up on videos and doing that stuff, and because I have seen like we did a lesson years ago, I think like 2011, where we did the difference between primary and secondary sources.
Sure.
And if I Google it today, it's used in teachers' lesson plans.
That's awesome.
And so I've been thinking a lot about trying to maybe do something like that and get back into it, and it's probably give it another go here when I can.
Well, Christopher, thank you so much for coming on our show. It's been great to have you.
Yeah.
It's been great catching up with you, man. We need to stay in touch. I got your phone number now. For those of you listening, you want to get some of his books, it's jumpsplashbooks.com. As always, whenever we do these podcasts, I will create a page with all the pertinent links to all the places you need to go. I will link to the website, to the Facebook page. You guys have Instagram, I would assume?
Yes, we do.
I will
at Jump Splash Books.
I will get everything up there. Thank you so much for your time. And hey, man, if you want any history stuff, if you want to collaborate on anything, man, I'm down like 4 flat tires. Not to sound too old, but yeah, just hit me up, man. You need anything that I can help you out with, or you need some World War II stuff or anything, just hit me up and we'll sort something out. We'll make it work.
I will absolutely do that, man. I appreciate that. I will look forward to that.
And if you
thanks so much for having me on the phone. Like you said, it's been great catching up, man. 22 years.
Yeah, maybe next time maybe 10 years from now we'll make it shorter. But hey, if you and the family, I know how you Northerners are about coming down to Florida on all your fancy vacations. So if you find yourself in the, Orlando, Tampa, or anywhere below that, south of that, hit me up and I'll come out and meet you somewhere.
You know what? I will be there later this year, so I'm going to shoot you a text.
Fantastic, man. Thanks so much, and talk to you soon.
Okay, man. Thank you. Appreciate
Bye-bye.
it. Talk to you soon.